But what I want to say about conspiracy is that we are facing the most devastating series of propaganda that has ever hit the American public, or the world for that matter. As I've told, and I think even last year I mentioned, there are three major worldwide conspiracies that we've had to deal with. Number one, and this means that everyone across the world has accepted these as fact, because no one has tried to debunk it. Number one was the phony fall of the Soviet Union. Everybody talks about the fall of the Soviet Union. It never fell. The Communist Party just went underground. They gave orders to the student unions to go forward with the protests. They told the KGB to stay home. They told the Stasi in East Germany, in Leipzig, to stay home and not arrest the students. In fact, I watched a documentary of Russians, libertarians, who were talking about the fall of the Soviet Union and Yeltsin and all this, and he said, you know, the thing we could never understand, as we were celebrating in the street with Yeltsin, which they didn't realize he was a puppet as well, they said, where was the KGB? We never went anywhere without being followed by the KGB, and suddenly they had nowhere to be found. That's because this was a phony fall. And are we also to believe that the KGB could not capture Mikhail Gorbachev in his undefended villa? The KGB has undermined dozens of nations, and we're to believe that they couldn't capture Gorbachev in a failed coup? It's just incredible. And the worst thing of all is that when the media announced with a straight face, without challenging it, that the heads of the KGB, the GRU, the Defense Department, and several other were fleeing for their lives because of the failed coup. And no journalist at all ever asked, who were they fleeing from? Who does the KGB head flee from? Who does the head of the GRU, the Russian intelligence, flee from if he's the head of the GRU? Who does the defense chief head flee from? You see what I mean? It doesn't make sense. But not a single journalist in the United States questioned that. You don't think that they saw that contradiction? Of course they did. But they knew you never talk about those contradictions. The U.S. supported the phony coup because they wanted an excuse to bail out Russia. And they did so with aid and trade. U.S. oil industries came in after the phony fall, rebuilt the entire Soviet oil system, allowing them to become one of the biggest producers of oil in the world. We also shipped palletfuls of $100 bills over to Russia, and that's why the oligarchs, who are the actual real communist leaders, the oligarchs, only had $100 bills when they went to Europe. They gave $100 bills for tips because they didn't have 5s, 10s, or 20s. They were dealing with palletfuls, suitcases full of $100 bills that the Federal Reserve has shipped to them. The second major worldwide conspiracy is the phony war on terror, 9/11. 9/11 was not, I repeat, not 19 independent hijackers attacking the World Trade Center. It was a deep state operation from beginning to end. They hired the terrorists, and they weren't, by the way, the 19 named terrorists. In fact, 7 of those are still alive, so they didn't die in 9/11. But the terrorists could not have loaded all the explosives in buildings 1 and 2 and 7 that came down with controlled demolition. So there's a massive cover-up and conspiracy. Why would the government engage in a massive cover-up if this was a legitimate terrorist attack? What are they trying to hide? It's because it wasn't a legitimate terrorist. That was a false conspiracy. In fact, I had a humorous conversation with a mainstream friend of mine, and he said, and I challenged him about not believing in conspiracy with a subscriber to my brief, and he knew about my belief. And he said, oh, I believe in conspiracy. I believe there was 19 hijackers that took down the World Trade Center. I said, no, that's not a conspiracy. That's a false conspiracy. That's the official narrative to cover for the real conspiracy, which is the government itself, the deep state, loading the buildings with explosives. It took months of preparation. In fact, the weekend before 9/11 came down, someone went into the World Trade Center, both towers, and sealed them off. Sealed them off so that nobody could go in or out, and turned off all the lights First time it's ever happened. And that's when they set all the demolition charges. And I only found that out when I was on the Art Bell show and Coast to Coast. And he was challenging me about this being a deep state operation. So somebody called in from New York who had been driving. He lives in Staten Island. He drives across into Manhattan every night. And sure enough, he said, look, I drove through there that night on the weekend, and those towers were dark. So he confirmed what I said. Art was impressed. But in any case, the third is the worst, and that is this. So what I want to tell you is, this is a worldwide conspiracy that is different from the other two. The other two just required that you accept what they say. But this one requires that you participate. And 80% of Americans are gullible enough to participate and go along with this. And that's the saddest thing that I come here to do, is that they have determined that they can, in fact, fool 80% of the people into not even questioning. The key to survival is going to be getting healthy.